everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last checked in for a recent reads video. If you saw my recent reads video last week, you know I had a really terrible reading week to start off February, and while this week was better, it still wasn't great. I read 4 books this week. And considering that one of those was a novella, it wasn't in terms of numbers that much better than last week, I think. So that means that so far we're halfway through February and I've only read 7 books, which if you watch my channel, you know that that number is so low for me. But even though my numbers for this week were low, I do feel like my reading has improved over this past week. So hopefully we're kind of in an upswing for the second half of the month. I have also just been reading a lot of like longer books this month, but anyway, let's jump in and talk about the 4 books that I did complete over this past week. So the very first book that I completed was The Casket Girls by Elise Arden. This is a reread. It's one of my rereads for the year. This is, I feel like I've spoken about this so often lately. This is YA paranormal. It is set in New Orleans following like the worst hurricane like that's ever happened. The main character and her father, the main character Adele and her father are returning to New Orleans following this hurricane, where the entire city basically has been evacuated, and they're returning, some of the first people to return. So the city is very underpopulated. Like there's not very many people around. There's still not really electricity or any of that type of thing going on, and there are some weird happenings starting to go on. There are a lot of people turning up dead, but not just victims of the storm that seem to have died through other circumstances. I can tell you that this series involves witches and magic and voodoo, and vampires and shapeshifters and all kinds of fun creatures. It also has a historical element to it. You do at some point in the book hit a part where you do get like epistolary type of stuff from the past, which I really enjoy that part. It is a chunky book. This is 560 pages. This whole trilogy is chunky, but I'm rereading this to finally finish this trilogy. This is my 3rd time reading this. I read this originally when I was approved for this on NetGalley years ago. I then reread this when I was approved for the sequel on NetGalley, and now I'm rereading both of those so I can finally complete the trilogy. Really enjoyed this. I don't know what my original rating for this was. I think it was a 3.5 star, which seems a little low, because I do really love this and I do recommend it. I've upped it to a 3.75. I think this book shows it's enjoyable, really enjoyable, worth reading, and I think it shows a lot of potential for where the series can go, but it does have like some problems. Like it's 560 pages. Does this book need to be this long? Probably not. I think there are some areas where it could have been like a bit more like tightened up in terms of the plot, but I really like how all the paranormal elements are incorporated, and I overall just really enjoyed this. And like I said, I gave this 3.75 stars. I then listened on audio to After the End by Amy Plum. This is the first book in a duology. It's YA sci-fi, I guess you would say. So the premise of the book starts off that you're following a character named Juno who lives in a so she lives in a commune in Alaska, like in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, with her small clan. And it is that World War III has happened and the world has, you know, very little population left, I guess. I don't know if the whole world or whatever, but this clan, there are other people besides this clan, but this clan keeps to themselves for their survival, doesn't let outsiders in. And then, this is in the synopsis, so it's not a spoiler, come to find out when the main character is kind of one of the like golden people of her tribe, of her clan, sorry, when she goes on a hunting trip, and when she returns, her entire village is gone. All of the people are gone, and there's signs of a struggle, all of that. And she then goes on a mission to try track them down. to discover that World War III never happened. The world is going on completely as normal. And so what is going on? This book does have a speculative twist. That's all I'm going to say. I really like that premise, but the speculative part of this book I just really didn't like, which is interesting because I feel like I normally quite enjoy a good speculative element in like my books, but for some reason in this it just really wasn't working for me. There is also this has got alternating perspectives. You've got Juno, you've also got a character named Miles, I think his name is, who is the son of the head of a pharmaceuticals company, who we know that his father is trying to track Juno down for some reason, we don't know what. And he kind of gets involved in that. And so we've got his perspective and Juno's perspective. The romance in this, it wasn't terrible. I didn't think it was too insta-lovey or anything like that. I mean, you know, but it was very cheesy, like very, almost not cheesy, but like cringy. Like there was quite a few scenes or like dialogue where I was just like, ugh. And I don't know if this is me just getting older. Like I'll be 32 this year. Maybe I just can't handle cringy teenage romance anymore. I don't know, but there were definitely several points where I was left like cringing quite a bit. Yeah, I didn't find this super engaging. It was okay. Like I liked it well enough. I will continue on, and because like I said, it's only a duology, I will read the second book. It was narrated on audio by Emily Rankin and Graham Hamilton, and I gave it 3 stars. I then listened on audio to The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky by Mackenzie Lee. This is a novella, of course. It is book 1.5 in the Gentleman's Guide series. So this book comes between The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. So it's set after the events of that book, but before the events of is it The Female's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy? I don't own the second one. The Female's Guide? The Something's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. The Female's Guide. Anyway, not important. So it comes between books 1 and 2. It's a short, like, novella. It's only like 2 hours on audio. And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I was really happy to be back in this world. So if you don't know, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue is a historical fiction series that follows Monty. Monty's our main character. He is a bisexual character who is very selfish in a lot of ways, but he's very lovable as well. And he is going on his grand tour, which back in this time was, you know, the grand tour that you went on, where you went all around Europe before you kind of had to come back and take over and like learn to take over like his father's estate. He is going on this trip with his best friend, oh my god, Percy. Oh, for a second I couldn't remember his name. His best friend Percy, who he has been in love with for a long time. And so, there is a lot of adventures that happen as a part of this like grand tour as well, and a lot of shenanigans ensue. So that's what the first book about. And like I said, so this book is just a little novella set at the end of this book, and I loved this. This was so enjoyable. It's narrated on audio by Christian Coulson, who was the narrator of the first book, if I'm not mistaken. He did a great job, as he did in the first one. I really, really enjoyed this. This was like laugh out loud funny. I was listening to this and also worked out, and I didn't realize until I actually was writing down my, like filling out my like reading notebook for this, that I read this on Valentine's Day, which I think was like quite a fun, nice little novella to read on Valentine's Day. This is laugh out loud funny. I was reading this at my desk at work, and I was just like giggling to myself with like, Monty is just so like lovable, like, and like they're so cute, and like there's a lot of just like funny, you know, things and stuff that happens. I'm not going to go too much into what happens in this, obviously, because it is a short little novella, but definitely worth checking out. I think this was originally like a pre-order perk for the second book, but my library had this, so I don't know if it is like more widely available now. I don't know, but if you can get your hands on a copy of this to read or listen to, definitely recommend, because I really, really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.25 stars. And the final book that I read this week was Sad Cyprus by Agatha Christie. This is the 21st book in the Hercule Poirot series, which is a series that, as you may know, I've been working my way through for several years now. And I really, really liked this one. This is not one that I've ever really heard anything about, so I knew that I would enjoy it because I always enjoy Agatha Christie, but I didn't have like necessarily super high expectations, but I did really enjoy it. And as I've mentioned, this is yet another example of Agatha Christie just like trying something new. She does so many, like, Agatha Christie, let's be real, was a racist, but unfortunately, it's just a fact of life that the majority of the white people back then were racist. It's awful, but it's just a fact of life. And so don't love that about her, but in terms of her writing and the way that she crafts a story, like, she was a genius. She tries so many different things, and for something, like, she was writing in the 30s and 40s mainly. For someone writing in that time period to just be like trying all these different like narrative techniques and things is just, I don't know, I'm just really impressed with her. In this one, we start off with a very short part at the beginning where we're basically seeing a woman who is on trial for murder for poisoning someone. And you get a little slight glimpse that Hercule Poirot is present at the trial. We then jump all the way back until, Anyway, we jump back to before the murder and follow all of the events kind of leading up to the murder, and Hercule Poirot doesn't come back into it until like halfway through the book, because we get everything leading up to the murder and the murder happening, and then someone engaging him to find out exactly what happened. So, like I said, I've never really seen that from any of the Agatha Christie books that I've read so far. We have had other ones where Hercule Poirot wasn't in it a heap, which is so funny because he's like the titular character. Titular is one of my favorite words. Anyway, he's the titular character, but he's like, sometimes he's like hardly in the book, which is so crazy. But then he comes into it and works his detective magic to figure out exactly what happened. So in this one, I thought I had worked out who it was. I didn't know how they had done it or their motive for doing it, but I thought I'd figured out the who, just not the how or the why. And then it turned out I didn't have the who or the how or the why. I had nothing. I was completely wrong. When it was revealed, I was like, oh. And the great thing about Agatha Christie mysteries, like, I'm a fan in case you couldn't tell, is that she really does leave everything there for you. Yes, sometimes it is like not necessarily that most people could put together because there is a lot of different pieces to the mystery, but she does lay it all out for you. All of the hints and clues and everything that he puts together are given to you throughout the story. It's just a matter of being able to put them together. And sometimes I've never completely solved a mystery, but I think the last one that I read, I guessed quite a few parts of it and I was really proud of myself, but then we come to this one and I guessed nothing. So, you know, it is what it is, but I feel like I'm rambling at this point, so we're going to move on. I gave it 4 stars, really enjoyed. Looking forward to reading more Agatha Christie. So that's it. They're the 4 books that I read. Let's talk about what I'm currently reading. Surprising no one, I'm reading Middlemarch by George Eliot. This is my buddy read that I am doing with Michelle from Michelle Lexi. So I was really behind on this the last time that we spoke, and I'm still behind, but not as behind. So we were supposed to be reading 2 parts. They're like book 1, book 2, but I'm calling them parts just for it's easier to refer to them as that. So really, we should have read 4 parts by now, and I've only read 3. So I'm on page 278. This is obviously hugely chunky. So I'm behind by a part, but I am currently reading this like right now. So I'm hoping, well, I will read all of part 4 today. So I'm only like a day behind. So my plan is to read part 4 and then pick up my next read and read that, and then come back to this and read parts 5 and 6. So I should hopefully, when I talk to you next week, actually be up to date with this. But anyway, so I'm currently reading this. I think when I talked to you guys last week, I was struggling with this. It's just like that with some classics. The writing can be, it's not always overly engaging writing in classics, and that's definitely the case for this. There is also a crap ton of characters in this, and I was really struggling to keep all of the characters straight, because this is basically just, this is very like character focused. There's not overly a lot of plot, which doesn't necessarily bother me. I quite enjoy character focused stories, but this is focused on like a bunch of different characters like throughout like a town, the town of Middlemarch, and I don't know, I'm not as engaged in all of their stories. So what I ended up doing was, thank God for Spark Notes, which I never used in my like education in high school, but now as an adult reading this, I was like, I'm gonna Google this. And so I have been reading, once I get through a part that like is like, the Spark Notes is broken up into like kind of like chunks of chapters, and when I get through the chunk of chapters, I then read the summary on Spark Notes, and that has been helping me a lot. Just keeping track of exactly what's happening, because while I am reading this and I'm understanding, it's not like I'm like completely stupid, like I get it, but reading it again then put into like layman's terms of going, okay, yes, it's this, then this, then this, then this, because they do it in a couple of paragraphs and what takes like 100 pages of this. So that has been helping a lot. And I will say that in the part, like the last like 100 to 150 pages have been much more engaging than the beginning part of the book. I'm much more engaged in a couple of the different storylines that are going on. There are a couple, like I said, because we're following a couple of different characters and kind of a couple of different storylines, there are unfortunately ones that I find much more enjoyable and engaging than others, but you know, I'm making my way through it. It is so big, like, and it is just slow reading. Like, to read 278 pages of any other book would take me like a couple of hours, and I feel like I've been like invested so much time in this already, and like I'm only like that much of the way through. So anyway, this is what I'm currently reading. Like I said, the aim for today is to finish part 4, to catch up so that I can message Michelle, because she's ahead of me. She finished part 4, and I think she's probably started on part 5. So yes, that I can message her and give her my thoughts on part 4 so that we can discuss. So that's it. That is everything I read this past week and what I'm currently reading. I said I'm not as behind as I was last week, because last week technically I was one part behind last week as well, but I was also only like 200 pages into this. So I had like 400 pages of this to read before I could even get to the next bit of this, whereas this time I'm actually like up to reading this. So I feel like I'm kind of a little bit more back on track, and hoping to really knuckle down and get some good reading done this week so that I can get a few more books in for the month, because not that my numbers like overly matter to me, but I am definitely just like not getting through books the way that I normally would. Anyway, this video has turned really, really rambly. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you've got any thoughts on them, or I'd love to chat about what you guys have been reading. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.